American teenagers, well, 19 and 20-year-olds anyway, once helped repulse the British at Bunker Hill. But there's no indication that our teenagers are going to do it again. The British invasion this time goes by the code name Beatlemania. D-Day has been common knowledge for months, and this was the day. The invasion took place at New York's Kennedy International Airport.
Look, can we please have quiet? Quiet, please. Hey,
let the feasting begin.
Unless you keep quiet, we can't even have a present. Will you please shut up? Shut up.
Listen, I got a question here. Very quick.
Did you
hope to get a haircut at all?
No. I had one yesterday.
That's no lie. What do you think of Beethoven?
There's one over here.
Great. Especially his poems. I keep tracking that guy every day. I'm sick of that one.
What do you think your music does for these people?
I don't know. Well, pleases them, I think. Well, they must do because they're buying it.
Why does it excite them so much?
We don't know, really. If we knew, we'd form another group and be managers.
That's the way it is. Friday, February 7th, 1964.
Hello and welcome to episode 295 of Something About the Beatles podcast. First off, I want to thank everyone who has written to satb2010 satb2010@gmail.com to get signed up for the newsletter. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, and those who are now getting the newsletters know why it's a good reason to get those newsletters. It's definitely something that is worth your while. I think we can all agree. So thank you for that, and everybody who hasn't so far, consider it. I think you will be glad you did. Now, we had our first drawing day after Thanksgiving here in the States for the Capitol sets. Got 4 winners. I will announce that stuff publicly as far as names go once I get confirmation that the stuff is shipped and all that stuff, so I don't want to get too much ahead of ourselves now. But here we are in this week of much to enjoy in Beatle world with the release of the Beatles 64 doc. Now, I will say that I got to see it in advance of my conversation with David Tedeschi and Margaret Bodde, and I quite enjoyed it, all right? This is as somebody who has seen the previous iterations of the Maysles brothers film. I was very happy that it was not just a straightforward chronological telling of the first U.S. visit, which we already got 30 years ago. I don't keep track of this stuff. It's like once I buy it, I consider I've got it, and I don't think too much about, is it still available? I would suspect it's not available for release right now. It's certainly not a Blu-ray edition. Maybe it's been reissued at some point. I don't really know. I don't keep track of that stuff, but it is out there. I think even going into this Beatles 64 discussion, I kind of in advance had the thought that, like Let It Be and Get Back, it was meant to complement rather than replace. So I think that is probably, having seen it now, the right mindset to have, okay? But part of me was surprised and part of me was not surprised at all to see some of the just over-the-top negativity expressed toward it in social media, which is one more reason to avoid social media. I just have a direct pipeline like a newsletter, but you are allowed to be disappointed. You're allowed to have expectations going into something like this. That's fine. You're allowed to not like it. I would suggest perhaps calibrating expectations in advance to be real about what you're getting, knowing there's a finite amount of Beatle film and audio in the world. There are things we know to exist that are lost. There are things that get found and get circulated. And certainly in the making of this, I'm not sure how many people know this, but there was previously unseen Maysles Brothers films worked into it, as well as other things that they dug up. But you'll hear that straight from them in our conversation. So I think that taken in the proper spirit of, yeah, you've seen this before, but here's another version, here's another angle on it, and also keeping in mind who this might be intended for, because seemingly the people true to expectations, making the most negative noise, are the biggest of the hardcores. But if you can relax a bit and enjoy it for what it is, I think you will find it indeed enjoyable. And something that, as we've said on the show many times before, when something comes out, you can quibble with it if you like, but in the end, the Beatles have always had that capacity for lifting us out of dark times and raising our spirits and filling the world with this positive energy that we can certainly use more of. And it doesn't matter, it's more than 50 years past their breakup. The power of them on film and in song is still there. It still packs as big a punch as it ever did. And we should be thankful for the minor miracles our lives give us. So, with that spirit. So, here's a conversation. I will tell you that it was not under the normal sort of sappy circumstances, put it one way. So, we got an hour and made the most of it as best we could. But if you already watched the film, maybe you want to hear what they have to say about it. And if you haven't watched the film yet, or if you've read reviews of it, still check out what they have to say about it, because maybe that's a good way of seeing it through the maker's eyes and figure out how close they came to fulfilling what had been their intent in the first place. After the conversation, I'll give you a little bit of my take on it. Not that's worth anything, but I never want to be in the business of telling people what their opinion should be. But I can offer for what it's worth what I got out of it. Here we go.
It's the bloody Beatles. Shut up.
You guys have worked together on a number of music films. The Dylan stuff, No Direction Home, and Rolling Thunder Review, and the previous excursion to Beatleland with Living in the Material World. Did any of this previous history with music films inform the making of this?
I've worked with David and Marty on many music documentaries spanning back 20 years, starting with the blues series on PBS, a series about the blues. And that's when we started working with David on editing Marty's film for that series. But, that's just a long-winded way of saying that, there's a shorthand in communicating with each other. We all also share similar sensibility about the value of these films and how they can be put together and how you can, I think we all have a reverence for beautiful archival moments in film from the past. So, when you start looking at something like the beautiful 16 millimeter black and white footage that was shot by Albert and David Maysles, you're just so inspired and you're just so blown away by the fact that they had that opportunity to capture that moment on film so beautifully.
Yes,
I would put
absolutely.
it a slightly different way, a more, in a way, from my point of view, a more practical way. I got a call from Apple to ask if I'd be interested in working on something and what I would do with this footage. What were my thoughts? And the first call I made afterwards was to Margaret, because I know that Margaret is capable of making things real. Like that's in a way what a producer does. And I would also say that Bob Dylan says in No Direction Home, I was a musical expeditionary. And I think one of the reasons Scorsese really related to that is he's a cinematic expeditionary. He eats up film and then it comes out of him in a different form in this, beautiful way. And I think both Margaret and I really respond to that. We want to work on something that's new and challenging and emotional. And I hope, this felt like it would be an opportunity to do something interesting.
Who do you see as the audience for this? Did you have one in mind, or it's Beatles, the audience will find it?
It's a little twofold. I mean, it's Beatles, the audience will find it, but we're always honed in on young people.
Okay.
And I think Apple Corps also is interested in appealing to a young audience. And I didn't realize until we were done with the film that it is a film about youth. You have these four very young guys. You have this 20-year-old, George Harrison, and Ringo's 23, and the others are somewhere in between. And you have these 15, 16-year-old boys and girls, and they're so young and they're frozen in time because that's the moment that was captured by this footage. But there's a real sense of how both the fans and the band went on to have a real impact. even though they're so young and even though they're so different from the generation that came before it.
We're so thrilled that Disney Plus is going to drop this the day after Thanksgiving, because the dream, of course, is to have different generations gather and experience the film together. And I think, it's a wonderful thing when your film doesn't have a specific age. It would find it appealing because the Beatles have that kind of rare quality of being discovered and rediscovered each generation. So
Yeah.
we're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to hearing stories about people watching it together with their families.
Yeah, undoubtedly.
What do you like about the Beatles?
The way you put it together is surprising in a way that I think the fans wouldn't necessarily expect, like a chronological linear telling. It's much more impressionistic, with the cutting back and forth between the Beatles and the hotel room and the fans and the action going on outside that, as well as the contextual inserts. Tons of context in here. You've got a series of different talking heads throughout, giving the sort of backstory to what was going on at the time. I don't want to give away too much to anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but it was a refreshing approach to telling what is a familiar story. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, well, it's kind of a two-part question. With this connection with Apple and them having this film that they owned and they're running it by you, can you make something of this and what would it be? Was there any sort of implicit approval required for what you ultimately included? And like Peter Jackson, you're coming into this with inherited footage that you have to then build out with whatever additions that you make. Did the footage in hand influence the direction you wanted to go, or did you already have a vision in mind to use the footage a certain way?
It's hard to say because I'm a Beatles fan.
Right.
And I know what's out there. And I have my opinions based in part by the footage I've seen. I will say that I knew Al Maysles. I have tremendous respect, admiration for the Maysles brothers and their films. But I thought that in the case of their projects, like what's happening, they weren't so interested in the music. They were interested in the Beatles as a phenomena and the Beatles themselves as people. But the music, and I'm very interested in the music. And then the other side of it is they didn't really focus on the fans, but even Albert later in life, he said, well, you know what, they were pretty interesting. Maybe there was a story there that we could have incorporated more of. And of course, the fans are, the footage from 1964 of the fans is so imbued with this special energy that, to my eye, it was extraordinary, very funny, and it transported me to 1964.
I did think that they served as sort of the fifth member alongside John, Paul, George, and Ringo as a main character. And the way you guys put this together and got far more interaction with the fans and their insights, what they thought was happening, that was huge because in Beatles scholarship right now, that is a big part that is being freshly mined, that part of the story, the fandom. And there's been generations of mostly male historians writing about the Beatles' history and writing off the Screaming Girls as if it was trivial and unimportant and not this profound, life-changing experience that happened to them young and carried on all through their lives. And you guys presented that in this film, which I thought was just a wonderful touch. I don't know if that was something that you'd been thinking along similar lines, but that's certainly where the historiography currently is going with Beatles. As big Beatle fan, I know you were. I've read other interviews with you. Margaret, I'm assuming you at least had a fandom for the Beatles to some extent. I'm presuming you guys saw, if not the 1964 on TV with Carol Burnett version, but certainly the 1990.
How did you see the Carol Burnett version?
Have I seen it? I have not.
Oh, you haven't?
No. I just know it exists. I would love to.
As part of our, we had a great researcher on this project, Austin Short, who we worked with on two other projects, the Rolling Thunder Review, Bob Dylan Rolling Thunder Tour documentary we did in 2019, and Personality Crisis, the film that we made about that David and Marty co-directed about David Johansen.
Yes.
Austin unearthed a 16 millimeter print of that CBS television special, and we had it transferred. And so we have seen it, and it's so funny. It's such a funny kind of early 60s idea, right? Of like, we can't even understand what's happening if you're just watching something, you have to have someone explain it or put it into some kind of framework. But yeah, you were asking about other iterations.
Yeah, well, to get back to what you're talking about, and for the listeners that might not know what we're talking about, when that Maysles Brothers footage was first aired in the States, it was November of 64. It was, I think, a series of Sunday night specials. And for that Beatle installment, which I believe runs about 45 minutes long, Carol Burnett was the host of it. I'm glad she's still around today, and people know her in many different other contexts. But I thought that was an interesting thing, an interesting choice. But I'm glad you guys got to see it. I'm glad it got dug up, because in my heart of hearts, I'm thinking that would make a fabulous bonus thing to the Blu-ray of Beatles 64, is putting that out there. But to circle back to my original question, you guys, I'm assuming, had seen the 1991 presentation of this footage as the first U.S. visit. And for people listening to this, they're thinking, oh, that's stuff we saw 30 years ago. This is a very different film. And I was wondering, having seen that, having experienced that, did that also sort of inform the direction we're going to take with this? Well, we want to do this and we don't want to do that. Or did you see that as like, we're going to build out from that with even more footage that wasn't maybe available or used prior to?
I think we looked at the footage that I got had been restored by Peter Jackson's company, Park Road. And it looks like it was filmed yesterday. I mean, it's black and white, and it's not a widescreen format, but it's so beautifully restored that it literally looks like it was filmed yesterday. So I treated it like any other kind of project, that this is new footage and no one's ever seen any of it before. And what's interesting about the footage, you do dailies. Interestingly enough, I saw Charlotte Swearin speak once when I was very young, and I already knew I wanted to be an editor. And one of the things she said is, when you look at the footage for the first time, you have to guard your reaction, rather guard that memory, so that when you get used to the footage, you still remember what an impact it had on you the very first time you saw it, which I thought was really, really interesting. I mean, of course, she's the great, great editor of many things, but many of the Maysles things in particular. We looked afterwards to see how much had been in first U.S. visit and how much it had been what's happening. There's 17 new minutes of footage that I've never seen before from what's happening, from those dailies. And that's 17 minutes is just of the Maysles footage. And as I said, the Maysles weren't that interested in the music, at least in this context. So say the Washington Coliseum, which has been seen before, it's been restored so well, and Peter Jackson's company, Wingnut, demixed the audio, and Giles Martin remixed it. It's never been seen like this. Like, it's a true document of who the Beatles were as a live band in 1964, playing, say, Long Tall Sally. And it's raucous rock and roll. So I would say there's 17 minutes of new footage. There's this musical stuff that Giles Martin and Wingnut have brought back to life. And then we have some stuff from collectors and from archives that have been buried.
Yes, the Miami local news footage.
For instance, the Miami local news footage. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was amazing. I'm glad that you guys dug so deep on that. And that leads me to another question I had when I was watching it is, you guys cover the Carnegie Hall concert that they did. And to people that are geeks like myself that have studied this stuff for years, You see that, in fact, you concluded in the film, there's that shot of the Beatles on stage, and they've actually got audience members sitting on the stage just behind them, almost like in the round, like the DC show. And if you look at the audience members, there are at least one person you can distinctly see with a film camera shooting the Beatles from behind.
That haunts us.
Yes, okay. I was wondering about that.
We did try to track down people who were there, including, we tried to ID a lot of those people. We did ID some of them. And, we did find someone who lives in New York City who she was there and she wasn't on stage with them. She was in some of the front rows of Carnegie Hall, and she took Polaroids of the band that had never been seen before. One of the photos that she took is in the film, but we really wished that there was actual footage.
In an exhaustive process, we did find someone who filmed, and the exposure was wrong. Back in 1964, she never got anything. She was filming, but didn't actually capture anything on film.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, it leads to another one of my questions was in going through everything that you had access to, were there things that you wanted to get your hands on that you knew to exist? Well, obviously this would be one, or that you did and wasn't of sufficient enough quality to use?
Well, that was the only one that wasn't sufficiently enough quality to use.
Okay.
It wasn't any quality at all. No, I think that if we knew something existed and we were able to find it, for the most part, we used it. Am I forgetting something, Margaret? Is there some pearl?
No, and we also had the benefit of, some of the archival material that we found that was the only thing available. Like, for example, there's footage of Paul on the train that looks like it's shot in 1880. Yeah, it's very degraded. And a reporter says something about, how does this impact Western culture or something like that? It's a very high-minded question. And his answer is so great. I mean, his reaction is so great. So we knew we wanted to include that, but it was so degraded. And we had the advantage of these restoration experts at Park Road Productions, Peter Jackson's company, and they were able to make it tolerable. It's not great. It still looks very degraded, but it at least can kind of integrate with the rest of the footage fairly well.
Well, that's pretty miraculous. Just think how far we've come. And God bless Peter Jackson for opening this whole world to things that were written off all these decades. And I know with the project that you're on the board on, the I can't remember what it's called now, the film something.
The Film Foundation.
Film Foundation, yes.
Yeah, it's Marty's nonprofit that restores feature films for the most part, documentaries, all kinds of film material at the archives. And he started that in 1990. And I really think that his work in documentary, on these documentary productions, really is kind of the other side of the coin of his preservation efforts, because he's not just dealing with archival footage and working with archival footage to tell a story, but it's an act of cultural preservation. He's so excited about these subjects, and he wants to make them new and fresh for new audiences.
Well, what a fabulous legacy. And it's geeks, it's in the best possible sense. That was the sense when we talked to Peter Jackson. Hey, he's a geek like us. It's like you do this stuff out of passion and love for what you're doing, and it's just a gift to the world. So God bless him for that. That's fabulous. One of the things I wanted to ask was what kind of things surprised you in diving into this along the way that maybe even as Beatle fans you weren't aware of, or that was a pleasant thing to uncover?
For me, the obvious answer, it's not a pleasant thing to uncover. I had known about it. I was aware of it, but I hadn't really remembered the degree to which it was an establishment that was against the Beatles and that did everything they could to make the Beatles fail. So you have within the press And within, Capitol Records waited a year to release their first album. Yes, some of the music was released through VJ or different outlets, but Capitol Records didn't believe that they could be successful. We think of almost as Beatlemania and the Beatles' success as being preordained, but when they're on that airplane coming to New York, they have no idea what awaits them,
Right.
and it's in the realm of possibility that nobody's going to be at that airport.
Have you been to America before? I have, yeah. Just for a holiday. Yeah, and it was very nice. Did you sell them? No, I didn't sell any, but I'm hoping to this time. How long are you going to be in America? 10 days. Well, our manager's going for 12, actually. Anything you especially want to see over there if you've got any free time? Free time. The wrong place, I suppose we'll have a bash at Statue of Liberty and all them, and the Empire States. And all the tourist things for tourists.
And you read the vitriol, Eric Sevareid comparing Beatlemania to the German measles. That surprised me.
These are hard guys. I'm glad you included that Newsweek piece in there. We actually just used that in a recent show. It is like top of the list of things that did not age well.
The other thing, just to build on what David was saying, is for me personally, the British Embassy story was really shocking and really surprising in, again, a very negative way. John's story about someone just coming over and cutting off a piece of Ringo's hair. There's a shot of a guy like putting his hand into a pocket of Paul's jacket from over his shoulder. It's like they were just being mauled, and that they were treated so badly at their own national embassy that we're honoring them. You have those people kind of, dismissively just saying, we're not proud. We have to take no pride in this band. And it's just kind of like, wow, they did, they really, on short order, they did prove themselves, but they were still, kind of definitely outsiders from those institutions.
Right. Which speaks to David's point about the negativity from the adult establishment world. I was so glad that you guys put that in there because, number one, I hadn't seen any of the embassy footage before. I don't think I'd seen that. At least I don't remember it. But the story is vividly ingrained in the memory of anybody who's read Lennon Remembers. And that's where you guys got the quote from, where he's talking to Jan Wenner about those bloody animals. And I swore at them. We stormed out. I'm glad that you guys put that in there. I literally, to the person I was watching the screener with, said, this is where Ringo got his hair cut. And then there it was. So I don't know how many people know that story, but you guys have come the closest to bringing that to life of anybody I'd ever seen. That was just wonderful. I really like the sort of non-obvious inclusion of the Marshall McLuhan stuff in there.
Well, it just struck us, for instance, all the shots of the transistor radios, and then, of course, Sullivan is television. And there had never been a success on television like the Beatles. And television was as a mass medium, it was pretty new. It was pretty new. The first I hear about television really as having that kind of impact is the Nixon-Kennedy debates in '60. So Marshall McLuhan seemed like a logical choice in order to contextualize things. And of course, Marshall McLuhan later on interviewed John. Right. So it felt like the fabric of the film.
The dominant fact of any art form is the medium being employed. So this is a commonplace among artists for this past 60, 70 years. And I picked it up there. It doesn't lose its relevance or its meaning when transferred to popular media. All it means, Jim, is this, that whether it's an electric light or radio or telephone or TV, each of these media creates a new environment. It creates a new situation for human association and human perception. Any medium at all creates a new pattern, a new atmosphere, a new environment of human perception, which works upon the whole man. It works upon the whole society. That is the effect. The medium has that total pervasive effect. That is the message, that social change that is brought about. The content of the medium is never the message, because the content is always the old medium.
I had known about that crossing paths, but I'd never seen it before, so that was great. Making the point of JFK being the first television president, I don't know, it's been said, with everything going on perfect for the Beatles, it was like the one thing they couldn't control was timing. And that they arrive, as you guys make the point, on the heels of A Nation in Mourning, that they're this breath of fresh air that gives the media something to latch onto and feel good about something for the first time in a couple of months. But there was something else about what they projected. There's definitely the aspects of friendship between them that inspires certainly everybody watching that, all the young impressionable kids, that they're having so much fun with their buddies, with their mates. What could we do? We'd start bands or start fan clubs, whatever they did. It was very much on display in what you guys put together. And I thought that was another good way that when you're not showing the music, you show them hanging out together. Just in the opening minutes, hearing a spontaneous, unaffected John Lennon laugh, that was a wonderful moment in the hotel.
And him and George on the train, when George instigates him to kind of just play around and improv for the cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a real genuine camaraderie and affection that's revealed by the intimate moments in the film.
Hey, I have a question back to Fred.
Can you sing Answer We Need Money First? Who said that?
Nobody is.
What do you have that nobody else has? Answer, press agents. I haven't quite got it right. How about your hair? Answer, we're really bald. Funny.
Absolutely. And you know it's unguarded, not performing for the camera stuff, because it seems like they forget the cameras. Although it was funny when they're reacting to the woman with the microphone in the hotel room right away.
Right.
That's one of the Maysles scenes that has never been seen before.
I'm glad that that was put in the trailer, that defy convention bit from Paul. Wonderful.
It's an apt summary of, their ethos.
Exactly. It's perfect. It's so perfect. And that one has aged well. Given every film is subject to budget and perhaps outside forces and time constraints, certainly, if you guys had had a bigger blank check to work on this, how different would it have been? Was there more stuff you would have wanted to do and develop and uncover than you were able to within this? Or did you pretty much nail everything you set out to?
Well, it's funny. Money and time don't necessarily mean a better film. We had 12 months, which is a very short schedule for us, 12 months of editing. But we were talking about it last night, that I had initially said to Margaret, let's do the interviews of the fans at the Plaza Hotel. And let's do something, let's go to the CBS, it's now called the Ed Sullivan Theater, to do Danny Bennett and people who had Sullivan had a real impact on them. And, of course, it was tremendously expensive. And we came up with the idea of the photograph, putting, say, Vicky Brenacosta at the Plaza through a photograph, because there's so many wonderful, they're so well documented. The Beatles are so well documented in that moment. And honestly, I think it's better for many reasons that we did that rather than go to the actual locations. So I don't know. I mean, the Maysles only shot a little more than 11 hours of footage. And it's not a lot of footage. I'm missing the wonderful recordings and Super 8 footage of Carnegie Hall, but that might never appear.
Right.
I don't know, Margaret, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just think we had kind of, David was given basically a expansive creative brief, but we had a fairly specific practical brief, right? Which is, the idea was to release this film in the 60th anniversary year. So we got it in there just in time. And it is, as David described, it's it's really a finite window of time and a finite amount of material that the Maysles shot of that visit. So I personally feel like it really was the right amount of, it's the right length. We couldn't have an episodic miniseries about this moment,
Right.
and so I mean you could, but it would be a different thing, obviously.
Sure.
So yeah, there's a lot of projects where you long for more time and you definitely long for more resources, but this one felt right.
Yeah, I look at it and I think, well, yeah, a miniseries would be great, but it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it is so refreshing at every turn. There's definitely a modern sensibility. It's easy to take something from the 60s and present it as it would have appeared or how it was created in that time. But the effort put into the contextualization throughout is fabulous. And they luckily are making new Beatle fans every day. I can attest to that. A year ago, Now and Then opened up a lot of doors for new people. What's this new last Beatles song hype? Oh, I like this. I'm going to dig deeper. So I think what you guys presented is part of that ongoing process. One of the things, speaking to the modern sort of history going into the Beatles, some of the unsung stuff besides the fandom, is the aspect of Black artists on the Beatles' art. You guys did a wonderful job of bringing in not just talking heads, Smokey Robinson, Ron Isley, but that Miracles performing yesterday. I've never seen that before. What a show-stopping moment. That was incredibly inspired. I'm so glad you guys did that. That was just wonderful. Talk about that some more. Was that a particular avenue you had in mind from the start? Or did circumstance sort of lead you to that?
It always, the idea that there would be some presence of covers, famous covers, something. We had talked about it from the beginning, but everything we tried to do was kind of formulaic and almost contrived. Smokey, the interview itself was a revelation to me. I mean, he had so much to say and it was so unexpected. I knew he had seen the Beatles in Liverpool before, as he says, before they were the Beatles. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to interview him. But when he said that they were the first white artist of their magnitude to say that they like black music and they listen to black music and they love Motown, my mouth dropped open, because I couldn't believe that no one had just, and maybe Smokey hadn't heard it. I don't know.
So they starts getting these royalty checks for "You Really Got a Hold on Me." What's this coming from?
Well, that's what I was going to say too, that we live in an era where people want explosive answers in a way. Everything is very black and white. And I thought it was beautiful the way Smokey, what a big heart he has. And also how gratified he was that they recorded,
You've really got a hold on me.
Yeah. And then later that he recorded the Beatles. And he did so quite freely. I thought that was, John Lennon's voice and "You Really Got a Hold on Me" is quite stunning.
It also seemed like a natural avenue to explore because it really starts with the Beatles and their love of this music and how inspiring it was for them and how coming to America was a dream for both, their musical career reasons, but also just because this is the land where their music that they just loved came from. And so there was almost kind of like a pilgrimage type quality to coming here. And you hear Paul saying, we really, they say they're going to fly in the Miracles and the Isley Brothers are playing and gosh, we hope we see them. It's just a real genuine, they're fans,
Absolutely. Yeah. And it was wonderful that even the people are no longer with us, like Little Richard, you were able to include that stuff into the telling of this, because all these artists are huge. And you look at all the Motown covers they were doing on their first couple albums, Money and Please Mr. Postman and stuff like that. I know the Supremes reacted to the Beatles by recording this album from Liverpool or something like that. It was like all British covers, like in 64, 65. So it was a two-way street for sure.
Yeah.
I'd also add, it was remarkable to me, all four of the Beatles, but in this case, particularly John, the matter-of-fact way, without any artifice, that they see things. And when John said, yeah, I mean, they've been trying to stamp out rock and roll from the beginning. I mean, I think it's because it came from black music. And the fear of what it was, the desire to move with that beat. I thought that was, it's very straightforward, it's very self-evident, but I had never heard it quite so directly expressed as that.
Yeah, he drills right down and puts his finger right on it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as fans, I know, David, you've talked about being a New Yorker, and that was sort of ground zero for the British invasion when they first came here. The Ed Sullivan Show and Carnegie Hall and the Central Park shoot, which you guys covered as well. Margaret, tell me about your fandom, about your relationship with the Beatles and how that's developed through the years.
Well, I always just loved music. I always really gravitated to music. I mean, my mom had different tastes, but I remember just really loving her vinyl collection of early Simon and Garfunkel. And, she had kind of a folk kind of bent to her. Clancy Brothers were very, kind of frequently heard in our home. But my brother got the White Album, and this was kind of years, I would say it was maybe, 5 years or so after it came out.
Okay.
Like that. And so I was maybe, 6 or 7 years old, and I just was fascinated by everything about that album. The 2-record set, white, and then that beautiful color poster. And every song was just a sonic world unto itself. Like every song was different. And, I didn't know these 4 guys yet. So I didn't suss out that like, there's George songs, there's John songs, there's Paul songs, but there was such a expansive range of song kind of styles, and lyrically, I was just immediately hooked. And from there, it was this wonderful exploration of everything that came before and then everything that came after, because they obviously had been, they were done making recordings as a band. And then I really was into John's solo work, and I was really into John's more experimental work as I got older, his and I just loved that he and Yoko were making music together. And I loved George's solo songs, and of course I loved Wings like everybody else. So It was kind of like this discovery after the fact.
Yeah.
But really, there's never a time where a Beatles song comes on the radio or starts streaming and you think like, not in the mood for this right now. It's like there's just anytime you hear the Beatles, it's just a complete embrace of it, because it's so good, no matter how many times you've heard the songs.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, what a gateway drug, the White Album. Were you from the East Coast as well?
I grew up in Massachusetts.
Okay. Not quite New York, but at least to a Midwestern person's way of thinking, the sophisticated side of the country. People are a lot more culturally aware and enriched. And speaking of which, I loved that you put in so much of the Leonard Bernstein stuff, the cultural ambassador for young people, certainly through the 60s.
I think this music has something terribly important to tell us adults, and we would be wise not to behave like ostriches about it. Besides, as I said, I like it. Of course, what I like is maybe 5% of the whole output, which pours over this country like the 2 oceans from both coasts, and it's mostly trash. But that good 5% is so exciting and vital, and, may I say, significant, that it claims the attention of every thinking person. Okay, let's get down to some specific songs, to the music itself. Here is a cheery bit by the Beatles. Now, that's not just cheery, it's also very unorthodox. For one thing, it suddenly, if you noticed, leaves out a beat, so that an ordinary 4-beat measure becomes a 3-beat measure. You see just one sudden bar of 3 among all those 4s. We never used to find that in pop music. It's new.
If I'm not mistaken, there's a segment from that 1967 special he did on pop music in there. The one where they have a clip of Brian Wilson doing Surf's Up.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. And we used 2 short clips from it.
That was fabulous. I'm so glad you put that in there. That's so great. That's something I wish they would put out officially. Great stuff.
That's the Beatles, always unpredictable and a bit more inventive than most. You know a remarkable song of theirs called She Said, She Said? Well, in that song, which goes nicely along in 4, there's again a sneaky switch to 3/4 time, only this time it's not just for 1 bar, but for a whole passage. She said, you don't understand what I said. I said, no, 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 you're wrong. When I was a boy, everything was right. Did you get it? If not, listen again to the Beatles this time.
There's so much that was surprising. A lot of it was very moving, even I'm seeing it for the 1,000th time. It's just the way you guys put it together. The fan footage, I don't want to say too much, but there's the girls that are accosted inside the hotel.
Have you tried getting in the hotel?
No, but I know 2 other girls that did. They made it all the way up to the 12th floor, and then one of the policemen got them and brought them all the way down again. I mean, there's no way you can possibly get in to see them.
Will you keep trying while they're in town to get in to see them?
Yes, we will.
For Carnegie Hall, I haven't got any tickets, but I'm going to leave my house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to try to get in. I don't have any tickets. They were all sold out when I called up.
What would you do if one of them actually stopped on the way out from the hotel and started talking to you?
I would talk back. I'd ask them, how they like America, what do they think of, American girls. I don't think I'd be too nervous. I don't know. Maybe I would, but that would never happen, so.
I don't even know if it's possible to track those people down now, but what a cool moment in time to have documented. It's so cool that the Maysles brothers caught that, because you read about stuff like that, and here is the actual thing happening in real time. Just another aspect of the Beatles fan experience that we know went on, and here it is actually being depicted. That was just a wonderful moment that you guys got in there.
Oh, never. No, this is embarrassing. We came upstairs. We came on the side too, and we've been hiding now. Could you just tell us where to go? Come on. We made it. Ha ha. All right, we got up here.
Are you registered in the hotel? What room?
The other room around the corner.
All right,
I don't have very good memory for numbers. Oh, see that?
In putting this together, was there a requirement for running it by them for approval, Apple or anybody, before you signed off on it? Was there any sort of editorial direction that they gave you?
There was no formal editorial direction. They saw several cuts, and they told us what they thought. Each of them told us what they thought of the cuts. Mm-hmm. As we said, for us, it was very quick turnaround, 1 year. Mm-hmm. The edit room was open for 1 year. And to be perfectly honest, we appreciated the feedback. They're all good viewers. And I'll give you an example. Olivia Harrison thought that, I don't know how to express it exactly, that John Lennon had said about going back to the black music, had said that very well, but including Pat Boone and Little Richard was something she urged us to do because we had been so segregated.
Uh-huh.
And it's impossible to understand now this idea that even radio stations, some played black music, some played white music. And white kids were expected to listen to Pat Boone. And of course, Pat Boone wasn't quite the same as Little Richard.
No, to circle back to John's remark, he wasn't one to inspire teens to move their bodies the way Little Richard did. Not to my awareness.
Snapping motion.
That was, again, a wonderful contextualization moment, showing people this was the world they were creating. And folks, it's easy from this distance to forget that, because if you hear Beatles on the radio now, it's alongside Boston or alongside Zeppelin or something else. This was the world they were creating. And so context is everything, and it makes you appreciate all the more how miraculous their art was. It's just fabulous how ahead of the curve they were, and every sort of discernible aspect, really.
Yeah.
So here it is, you guys, in conjunction with Apple, you're working with Peter Jackson, Giles Martin. Martin Scorsese, of course, did the Harrison film with the approval of Olivia and the other Beatles, Paul and Ringo. You've got this team together, at least loosely in place. What would be your dream project going forward, and how can I help?
Well, it depends how deep your pockets are.
Okay. The day is young. Is there something you see as an obvious go-to, if not immediately at some point?
I don't mean to dodge the question, but to me, the dream project is whatever kind of emerges from conversations with Marty and David and I, in terms of, it's almost kind of less the subject than the idea of what we want to explore, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've worked together on movies, 2 movies about Bob Dylan, a movie about the Beatles, a movie about George Harrison, to an episodic series and a feature documentary about Fran Lebowitz, the writer, humorist. And these are just kind of all things that either came to us through colleagues and friends, or that Marty wanted to pursue. And starting with Italian American, which was the first documentary that Marty made, which was really in the kind of in the style of some combination of direct cinema and John Cassavetes or something. It's just he just deciding that he wanted to document his parents. And it was also, I think it was something that was done for a specific PBS series about immigrants. But I think Marty would have made it without that assignment. Mm-hmm. And, from there to American Boy, to The Last Waltz, he just, documentary is in his cinematic vernacular. Like he's really, he gets a lot from documentary interviews. It's helpful in his narrative scripted work. There's an interplay, and I think he sees it as kind of one endeavor, but just on different scales.
I would add that, not unlike each of the individual Beatles, Scorsese seems to have these visceral reactions that lead directly to the work. So we all went to Cafe Carlyle to watch, we were invited to go to a show. Buster Poindexter sings the songs of David Johansen. And as soon as it was finished, he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, we got to film this." What he said was, "You have to film this." And he said, "I have to film this." And he said, "We're going to film it." But it's just because in the moment, it was so thrilling. I felt like it was one of the best concerts I'd ever seen. It was one of the best concerts I've ever seen. Very moving. And even though it's David Johansen doesn't have the fame of the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, I find the movie very beautiful and his music sublime. So I think the next project might be surprising. You just never know where or what we're going to do.
Outside Beatles, again, maybe with this team or something else, each of you, what would be your dream musical project to produce?
I've always admired and loved the music of Stevie Wonder. And I don't think that there's been, I don't think he's allowed or been interested in a Stevie Wonder film, But to me, that would be something I'd like to see. And it would be a dream to immerse yourself in I mean, he's got such an inspirational life, and he's an incredibly interesting and admirable figure who spans, so many decades. And his music he's never had a bad period.
No.
So Stevie Wonder would be on my list. What about you, David?
I'm not going to answer. First of all, there are too many. There's many, many artists that, in a way, haven't been given their due. Even someone like Stevie Wonder, who couldn't have been more successful, and more beloved by his fans, the fact that there's not a movie about him. There are movies about him, but the fact that there's not sort of this kind of movie, this kind of focus, seems unfair.
Is Scorsese a fan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe kind of lay that out there. Get him to follow the breadcrumbs. I was very surprised recently, because I actually was doing a bit of Stevie Wonder research recently, that when he was 13, the live album where Fingertips came from, that was a #1 album. I'm not talking R&B chart. I'm talking Billboard Hot 100. That's a staggering achievement right out of the box.
Oh my God, yeah.
What year was it?
It was 63. The Little Stevie Wonder, the 13-year-old genius, something like that. The live album where they call it Fingertips, which I guess was a spontaneous encore, because then you hear the band for the next artist come out. What key?
Yeah. No, it's an incredible recording. Put that one on the space shuttle. Get or whatever that was. The Voyager. The Voyager. One.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's staggering. Somebody of his magnitude in the pop world, that nobody has done a serious treatment of his story, which is an unbelievable story. Why hasn't it been done yet? I don't know.
I mean, I think people have tried. I know some people who have,
Oh, okay.
I probably shouldn't even talk about it, but I think that there's deep, deep interest. But, sometimes people just aren't ready for that or aren't interested.
I also think sometimes when there isn't a movie, there's a reason with the family, the estate, or the artists themselves, that sometimes it's lack of interest, or sometimes it's just too complicated. I mean, there's the cautionary tale of the Prince documentary right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, jeez.
Because I'm dying to see that movie, right?
All 9 hours? Is it 9 hours? Something like that?
I don't know. But I would sit through 9. If you were, I'm flying to London tonight. If you were to tell me I could watch it tonight, I'd cancel the flight, watch it, and then get on a plane at 5 a.m.
So for each of you, in the world you guys live in and beyond that, just as fans of music, fans of film, what are some of the music-themed films you most admire that you think are really special?
So many.
I know there's so many. Woodstock, the Les Blanc films. I mean, we used a piece in Rolling Thunder from Latchodrome, the Tony Gatliff film, which I had never heard of the film before. Marty, of course, was very familiar with it. And that's just a stunning film.
What film is this?
It's called Latchodrome, and it purports to be a history of the Romani people, but it's just music. And it starts in India, and it's like a caravan that moves through the Middle East and North Africa and France and Germany and Hungary, and it's all music. So in Rolling Thunder, the piece we used was a festival, a music festival in the south of France, and Django Reinhardt style.
Wow.
Yeah, just beautiful. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to step on you.
No, I'm done.
I have to add Jazz on a Summer's Day.
Yeah.
Which is a Burt Stern documentary of the Newport Jazz Festival, and just amazing document. And always with, I think, any documentary, it's some kind of combination of the stylistic and filmmaking approach and the actual what's being captured, right? And that film kind of has it all. There was a series during the pandemic, really good friends of ours in our community put up a screen in their backyard, and I programmed for that whole summer weekly screenings. And we watched Jazz on a Summer's Day. We watched Charles Burnett's Killer of Sheep. We watched a lot of music films. And it just proves that idea that, you need music to transcend life, and life's challenges. And it's really wonderful. I could just watch music documentaries for, several years and be happy.
I will tell you, I did get that sense of uplift watching Beatles 64, thinking, boy, this is a tonic for the times. This is really, sometimes you don't know what you need until it's put before you. It's like, yes, I needed this. This was great.
Oh, that's great to hear.
What was in the back of your mind when you came to the hotel here?
Well, in the back of my mind was probably the thought that I'd never get to see them, but in the front of it was the hope that I would. Actually. I actually knew I wouldn't get to see them, but just the gander to come into New York.
Have you tried to sneak into the hotel?
Yes, we were in the hotel.
How far in did you get?
12th floor.
And what happened?
We got all the way up to the 12th floor, and someone came up to us, all right, girls, out. See, the thing is, he thinks we're screaming, raving maniacs, and I just wanted to talk to him and say, why can't we see them? Why can't we talk to them? We're not Beatlemaniacs.
Why aren't you satisfied with just watching them on television and reading about them?
Because we can't know what they're really like. We're sincerely and wholeheartedly interested in them as people. And
they're not particularly handsome, are they?
No, I don't think they're handsome, but you came so much about them, and I think their personalities are so cute, but I think they're adorable.
To close, is there anything that you guys have got upcoming that you'd want to talk about, that you can talk about?
Beatles 64 goes on the platform on Friday.
Have you guys, as Beatle fans, I don't know, most people subsist on the CD iterations of their catalog and are fine with that. But now we've got this Beatles 64 mono box set out. Is that something you guys are going to be indulging in? Because I know I am. And, the purists are like, it's echo and it's not what they intended and it's a mishmash, all that stuff. But there's something about it that aligns beautifully with your film, that this is the currency of that first generation of American Beatle fans. This is how they experienced it. If you can detach from your purity tests and just listen to the Beatles the way they were presented to these American fans who, till their dying day, stayed Beatle fans, this is how they got into it. Just respect it for that alone. This was how millions of Americans fell in love with them. So to me, it might not be my go-to mixes or sonic presentation, but there's a charm and there's something sweet about hearing these things the way the American fans heard them. And God knows, on this show, I've had many first-generation Beatle fans on in glowing terms, just lovingly. You hear it in their voices talking about, and then the Beatles' second album came out, and I learned you can't do that, and played it for my fifth grade class. All those little stories. To me, that justifies it. I don't know if you guys were similarly sort of moved, even though you weren't first-gen fans. You came into it a little bit later. But does it have that kind of nostalgic or some other kind of appeal for you?
I would say I weaned myself off of vinyl many years ago. And then I was in LA right before I did No Direction Home. I was doing a job in LA. And I went over to a friend's house, and she had her original portable turntable and all of her original Bob Dylan albums. And we sat on the living room floor, and we listened to all of them one night, and all the ones from the 60s. And the sound brought me back to the moment when I had first heard all of Bob Dylan on vinyl. And so I went back, not for everything. I have Apple Music, I have Spotify, but I do really like to listen to the vinyl. And I had the same experience later with the Beatles music. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this new box set.
I am too, and more importantly, my husband is. My husband is a vinyl aficionado, even before it was on trend. I mean, he's a musician and a producer, and now a music archivist. So we will be listening and enjoying, and comparing with different mixes of those same songs.
Well, Well, I think nothing sets the table for that listening experience than seeing Beatles 64 first and then just wanting to re-immerse yourself in that experience, even if you didn't experience it the first time. It's just a wonderful presentation of it. So once again, congratulations on a film that is going to be enjoyed by millions for a long time. I know that the listeners here are very excited that it's coming, and they'll be happy to hear this conversation as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Robert. It was a great talk. Thank you.
Great being here in New York. Okay. Oh, is that the place? I don't know. Washington. I'm just moving so fast.
So there you go. Heard them for themselves what they had to say about this project. None of these people are dummies. They've been really good at this, made a lot of films for a lot of years, a lot of successful presentations of stuff. Not everything that even a skilled filmmaker does might be to our expectations or to our likings. And you are absolutely allowed and right to have issues with things. For example, it is an interesting thing to make a film about the first U.S. visit and have more screen time for Yoko Ono than you do Cynthia Lennon. That's one observation to be made. Brian Epstein being so reduced in what was in the finished film is another curiosity that I wasn't sure if I wanted to go there when I talked to them, so I didn't. I thought that what they had to say was plenty, just to get a little bit of insight, so I didn't want to nitpick with them. That's what we're all for anyway. But on the whole, I really did enjoy it. I am a fan of the sort of collage effect of filmmaking. When I was much younger, I didn't like that at all, but as I get older, it's something I sort of matured into as a way that I think captures the spirit and energy of life more than just strictly going down a checklist in order. I really like that approach. I really recognized the modern sensibility of bringing in other perspectives and voices in this telling. It was great to present the synergy between the Beatles and the Black American acts that they were such big fans of, and get the take of the people that are still among us that they did present in the film. I wish there had been more on the fans, and in fact you heard David say that in the talk that that Albert Maysles told him as much, that would have been a real story to document in real time. They got a bit of it, and as he said, the Maysles weren't terribly interested in the music. They were interested in the phenomenon of the Beatles, but what made it a phenomenon is the fan reaction and response. So it would have been nice to have more of that in real time, but we have what we have. And I do give them credit for digging up what they did dig up. Is there more to be done with the subject? For sure. Maybe part of the issue that galls some people is that, for a lack of a better title, first U.S. visit was already used. So calling this Beatles 64 might imply to some, well, this is just a 2-week window. What about the rest of 1964? Chuck Gunderson, author of the fabulous Some Fun Tonight 2-volume history of the Beatles' North American tours, had a great idea about a documentary that should be made on those North American tours, which came later in the year. I would love to see that come to fruition and would absolutely support it in any way I could. So he's the guy to do it, absolutely. He's not a filmmaker, but he probably is the deepest scholar we've got on those tours, and that's a film I absolutely would love to see. So I don't know what else they could have called this film. Beatles 64 is snappy and to the point, but yeah, it doesn't really describe the content. But going into it, we should pretty much know. Certainly the imagery used in the promotion of the Sullivan Show stage tips the hand enough to what it all is. So anyway, I hope people haven't seen it yet will enjoy it. Check out this conversation, and maybe the ones that saw it and found it lacking, maybe give it a second viewing. See if your opinion changes at all. But hopefully anyone who wants to can access First U.S. Visit or It's Happening or Yeah, the earlier iterations of the Maysles Brothers footage. It's all great stuff, great immediacy. It is the real life A Hard Day's Night, and it still packs a punch. That great energy and enthusiasm and adrenaline that fans of age experienced in 1964. I'd love to see a Beatles 63 film made as well, just covering what happened in the UK and Sweden and all that stuff. That would be a fabulous film. And we've got a book to work off of as well. So there's that. Till next time.
Made 5, 6.
I have to get on channel 2. Yeah, we're on this thing now in a minute.
Ready, fellas? Let's go. We're late. It's all happening.
Hey, on now.
Aren't you coming?
Something About the Beatles. Created and hosted by Robert Rodriguez. Executive producer Rick Way. Title song performed by the Corgis. Something About the Beatles is an evergreen podcast.
Tomorrow morning, an exciting morning on Wednesdays. Brad Phillips has the battles of the Beatles. The Beatles take on all the groups in the world. And tomorrow on Wins, and your favorites will be represented by vote. Tomorrow night at 7, the Beatles read their own poetry on a documentary, Meet the Beatles. They're all over the world.
Oh, really?
I
don't understand this.
Tomorrow night from 7 to 8, here at Wins. Don't
We ain't written no
Looking
poetry.
for a filter cigarette that really